Batteries pretty much run our entire world, right? From the phone in your pocket to the car in your driveway. And for what feels like forever, lithium-ion has been the undisputed king of that world. But that champion has a secret weakness, a big one, and it could put our entire electric future at risk. And that quote right there, it just perfectly captures the tension and, honestly, the incredible promise at the heart of what we're talking about today. We've got this technology that's been waiting in the wings for decades, and all of a sudden, it's stepping into the spotlight. And trust me, it could change everything. So before we can really understand this new challenger, we've got to take a hard look at the current champion. Why is the world so desperately searching for an alternative to lithium in the first place? What's the problem? Well, it all comes down to what people are calling the lithium squeeze. For starters, lithium is a finite resource, and the best stuff? It's concentrated in just a handful of places on Earth, which creates some pretty serious geopolitical risks for the supply chain. On top of that, getting it out of the ground is not exactly great for the environment. And then you have the cost. Lithium-ion batteries also need other pricey materials like cobalt and nickel, and their prices are just going nuts, making the final product way too expensive for a lot of people. Okay, so that's the problem. And this is where our story really starts to get interesting. The hunt for an alternative has led scientists back to an old idea, but one that's been totally re-energized for today, the sodium-ion battery, a potential solution made from one of the most common things on the entire planet. So just how common are we talking about? Well, sodium isn't just common. It's the sixth most abundant element in the Earth's crust. And I want to be clear, this isn't just a small step up from lithium. This is a total game changer when it comes to availability. And this right here, this is the heart of it. Let it sink in for a second. We are talking about a battery chemistry that can be sourced from salt water. I mean, that's what could finally make energy storage cheap enough for everyone everywhere. So how in the world does a battery made from salt actually work? Well, you might be surprised to hear that it's actually a lot like its lithium-ion cousin. It all comes down to a process with a really fantastic name. And that process is called intercalation. Honestly, the easiest way to picture it is to think of the battery's electrodes as a kind of hotel for ions. The material has this crystal structure, like a building with lots of rooms, and the ions are the guests that can check in and check out. And this creates what scientists call the rocking chair effect. So when you're using the battery, the sodium ions rock from one electrode, the anode, over to the other one, the cathode, releasing energy as they go. Then, when you plug it into charge, you're just pushing them all back to the anode, ready to go again. Simple, right? But there's one crucial difference. And here it is. Here's the catch. A sodium ion is just bigger and heavier than a lithium ion. Now, we're talking about a difference measured in angstroms. That's a 10 billionth of a meter. But in the tiny world of battery chemistry, that tiny difference has massive consequences. Specifically, that bigger sodium ion just can't squeeze into the structure of graphite, which is the workhorse material in pretty much every lithium-ion battery. It's like trying to park an SUV in a spot designed for a motorcycle. It just won't fit. So you can't just swap them out. Scientists literally had to go back to the drawing board and invent entirely new materials, new hotels that were custom built for this bigger guest. Okay, so this brings us to a real-world reality check. What can this technology actually do and what can't it do? It really comes down to a classic engineering trade-off with some absolutely incredible advantages and one major challenge. Now this chart lays it all out so clearly. On the sodium-ion side, you see these huge wins in cost, in safety. You can even drain them to 0 volts for transport, which is amazing, and they work great in the cold. But then you look over at the lithium-ion side, and you see it's one knockout punch, that higher energy density. Let's just zoom in on that cost advantage for a second because it's the big one. This chart really shows you the difference, and it's not a small gap, it is a canyon. By swapping out expensive lithium, cobalt, and nickel for super abundant sodium, iron, and manganese, the potential savings are just transformative. Which, of course, brings us to the big question. You have to be wondering, with all those advantages, what is the catch? Why isn't everything already running on sodium ion? And here's your answer. It's that trade-off we just mentioned, lower energy density. The best way to think of it is like packing a suitcase. A lithium-ion battery can just pack more energy into the same amount of space. A sodium-ion battery needs a bigger, heavier suitcase to hold that same amount of energy, and that's its key limitation. So, keeping that trade-off in mind, who's actually making these things? Because this isn't just some theory in a lab anymore. There is a quiet but super intense global race happening right now to turn this promising science into a commercial reality. You know what's wild? The history here. Research into both of these batteries started way back in the 70s. But then, in 1991, Sony commercialized lithium-ion, and because it packed more punch, it became the superstar. Sodium-ion research basically went into hibernation for like 20 years. It was only around 2010, when lithium costs started to really spike, that the world woke up and said, hey, what about that other idea? And today, that race is in full swing. We're talking about heavy investment from the world's biggest battery maker, KTL, in China, all the way to pioneers like Faradion in the UK, and specialists like Natron Energy in the US. This is not a niche project. It is a serious global industrial movement. And this number shows just how far they've come. KTL's first-generation sodium-ion battery already hits an energy density of 160 watt-hours per kilogram. Now, is that as high as the very best lithium-ion batteries? No, but here's the key. It doesn't have to be. That number is more than enough for tons of real-world uses, like smaller city EVs and massive grid storage. The tech is ready. So this all leads us to the big picture question, right? What does the rise of this tech actually mean for us, for society, and for our shared energy future? The key thing to understand is that sodium-ion isn't here to kill lithium-ion. It's not a replacement. Instead, it's going to find its own sweet spot, dominating huge markets where its strengths are perfect fit. Think about massive grid-scale batteries that stabilize a whole city's power supply, where cost and safety matter way more than weight. Or think about entry-level electric cars, scooters, and rickshaws, where making them affordable could finally bring clean transportation to millions. So if you take one thing away, let it be this. The goal isn't replacement. It's about diversification. It's about having the right tool for the right job. By having two powerful battery technologies working side by side, we create a much stronger, more stable, and more affordable energy system for everyone. And we break our risky dependence on just one single strained supply chain. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Lithium-ion batteries, they sparked the electric revolution, but mostly for those who could afford it. The question now is whether this humble, dirt-cheap battery, born from something as simple as saltwater, is the real key to finally delivering a truly sustainable and electric future for all of us.